Hello and welcome to West Country Wanderings. Welcome back to a coastal walk. Now, it's not Cornwall or Devon today, nowhere quite as glamorous as that. I'm a little bit closer to home, only about 35 miles away from the town of Stroud in Gloucestershire, and today we're in the county of North Somerset. That over there is the second Severn crossing. This here is Fisherman's Beach in the town of Portishead. And today we're going to be doing a walk here from Portishead, following the England's coastal footpath, down to the Victorian seaside resort of Clevedon. Always a joy to go to Clevedon. Was there, I think, a couple of years ago, exploring the pier there. But today we'll be focusing mainly on the coastline, what we can see around the coastline here, and telling you a little bit about the geology as well as a little bit about the history, as well as looking at the scenery today on this almost mid-October day. So I hope you can join me again here on West Country Wanderings for a coastal walk in North Somerset. So this here is known as Kilkenny Bay. I think it's got a couple of other names. So we're just south of the Marine Lake in Portishead. I won't be focusing on Portishead today itself, the town. I have covered Portishead, the marina and the town centre before. Did a couple of videos with Louise about a year or two or so ago. Did a couple of collabs here because Louise grew up in this town here. Louise, that is, from Southwest Sundays in this wonderful town here in North Somerset, which has changed completely since the 60s and 70s when it had two power stations, coal-fired power stations, and a very, very active port. Now it's more for leisure and more of a suburban area for people commuting into the larger nearby city of Bristol, which is only about 7 miles away. So this beach here, Fisherman's Beach, is extraordinary for its geology. We've got various wave-cut platforms. Behind me here, a type of rock you'll be familiar with if you've been following my Geopark Way series, because we meet up again with, yes, it's old red sandstone, which is a Jurassic rock round about 340 million years old. More famously, of course, around the cliffs and coastline of East Devon there, from Exmouth across to the BCP town of Poole. Tell him a little bit about this because the geology around here is quite complex. I won't go into too much detail, but it is worth pointing out a few things that are not that obvious. And in terms of geology, I don't think it's that well known. Well, it is amongst geologists because often undergraduates that are studying geology come to this part of the world to study the cliffs here. And it is unique for a reason I'll explain in a moment, more to do with marine life than the actual rocks. But let's have a quick closer look at the extraordinary rock formations along this exposed cliff here. So quite an interesting and unusual formation of the old red sandstones here. You'll notice if you compare it to what we see in East Devon, and indeed places like Dawlish, if you go on the railway line there, it does differ somewhat. So you've got mixed in with this, you've got lower and upper old red sandstones, so say around about 360 mil years ago. And this is the exposed section here, Devonian boundary. The other thing you have mixed in with this lot is the discontinuous section of dolomite conglomerate, which is a bit of a mouthful, dolomite conglomerate, which is from the Triassic period, which is around about 240 to 201 million years ago, and they're best identified down there towards where we've got those wave cut platforms. So I'll have a closer look at that when we make our way back up the steps to join the England coast path. Something else behind me though is worth mentioning to do with fish, or particular fish. Now out towards the marine lake there, just at the further end of Kilkenny Bay, are something known as fish beds. Now these are really special. It's not where fishermen actively fish now, not that I'm aware of, but fish beds in terms of where you find lots of fossils. And there's one fossil in particular which has been found here but nowhere else in the United Kingdom. It is found in lots of other parts of the world, not so much in Asia but certainly in South America and in Australasia around there. So it's interesting, it was found on a beach here in Portishead. Now it's from the Jurassic period, so it originates from 350 million years old fish, and it is unusual Now, it's quite difficult to pronounce. The name of this particular fish is a placoderm, so it's a family of fishes called a placoderm, and this particular one is called, I think it's the right pronunciation, Groundland aspis. Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful. Interestingly, on YouTube I found an animated clip of what geologists and botanists think this fish would have looked like when it was actually swimming in Jurassic seas some 350 million years ago. And it's really striking because it's almost like it's got armour plating on it, like bending around, you know, like what would it be? Something like a turtle or something, but heavier than that, much heavier, to fend off attackers in those seas there, all the way back in Jurassic times. The other odd thing about the fossil is because of the fossilisation of it, we know exactly the colour of the fish, which is actually quite rare for fossilised fish. And we do know it had a very strikingly red colour with a very strikingly silver and grey armour plating back. Amazing fish. I'll see if I can see if it's copyright free and include now. Certainly should be able to get an image for you coming on screen around now. What this fish looked like that was found just up around the corner there. I have been looking around. I haven't seen any fossils here this morning though, but it's certainly a place that people looking for fossilised fish do come to here in Portishead. Now, I said early on I hadn't found any fossilised fish. Well, I think I may have just done that very thing here. First of all, it looks like a fossilised limpet there. So that is rock fossilised. As you can see, normally obviously you'd see that stuck onto the rock. I think there's some over there. There's something else fossilised here, but I think this is a primitive fish, for ancient primitive fish here in Kilkenny Bay in Portishead. How about that? Okay, so we're going to leave Fisherman's Beach here, rejoin England's coast path, which I think is now called King Charles, isn't it? King Charles III, named after obviously our present king. That's with the nomenclature of the coast path here. Here's some more of this conglomerate here that I mentioned. You can see it here, so you can see this is definitely not red sandstone. So an early, or later should I say, intruder here of rock formations. As you can see, it's a conglomerate. Basically means it's an amalgamation of different rocks there, but that came after what, some 100 million years later than the Jurassic on that side. So amazing to see that, and you can see evidence of the wave platforms down here. You can just make out there where it's got that straight edge on it here. We've also got some seaweed formations and marine grasses which are here, which are quite unusual. The only other place I've come across that, not in the West Country, is in Essex, a place called Bradwell-on-Sea, if you know that part of the world. There, where you've got like a very difficult, undefined definition, because there isn't any cliffs there. It's like the land and sea almost merge into one. It's difficult to make out where the margins are between sea and land. But here you have that, and of course the tide is out quite a way at the moment. As we make our way down to Clevedon, which is about 9 kilometres, just over 4 miles following the coastal path, you'll notice that the intertidal margin will actually decrease in width, because here it's quite wide at the edge, southern edge of Kilkenny Bay. Now, if you do decide to come down these steps down to Fisherman's Beach at Kilkenny Bay, be careful. There's a fallen tree there, so you have to kind of duck underneath that. And they're also quite slippery with lots of debris where the tide's washed it up, so hold on to the handrail. I certainly won't be filming myself going up. As well as being England's coastal path, this footpath's got two other names. It's also known as the Mariner's Path. A bit further on in, you've got the Poet's Path, haven't you, around here, which is in Clevedon, I believe. But yes, this is the Mariner's Path, but it's also part of what is known as the Gordano Round, which is a 26-mile circular footpath. Part of it obviously following the England's coast path here by the edge of the Bristol Channel. I'll mention some more about the Bristol Channel in a moment. And it then goes inland. The other thing about the coastal path at this point, it's following the northernmost section of the eastern side of the Bristol Channel. Of course, River Severn ending back there at Severn Beach, where we finished, or kind of finished the Severn Way before heading inland to do the Bristol link and going into Bristol city centre. So that was the River Severn. Here it's now known as the Bristol Channel, and it's the furthest most extreme bit because it's just a bit further in there. Would take us back to Avonmouth and Severn Beach, of course. But yeah, it's a delightful walk. Over there, of course, is the western section, which is the Welsh coast section, and I believe there is a Wales coastal path which goes around the whole of the coastal line of the country of Wales. I've seen a little bit of shipping already here this morning. I've been here half hour coming out of, presumably Portbury, maybe Avonmouth, but that there doesn't look like it's containerised shipping. It looks like it's something to do with either pile driving for civil engineering or perhaps related to the oil extraction industry. Not sure. What are your thoughts on that? Interesting to see though. So here we're looking back at Kilkenny Bay. We're saying goodbye to that now. And the view of the second Severn crossing. Just make out the first one behind that. And here we're covered in heathland. Very pleasant. And there's like an open greensward before you get up to the road and the suburbs of the town of Portishead above. So shortly after leaving Kilkenny Bay, we've come round to Sugarloaf Beach. The Sugarloaf in Brecons, isn't it? Is that near Abergavenny Way? Somewhere around there, Monmouthshire, I think. And here we've got a slipway, as you can see there, with some boats just there. And also a tidal bathing pool, although I probably wouldn't fancy bathing in that, knowing how muddy that the waters from the Bristol Channel can be. But somebody obviously thought otherwise, and you've got some little steps going up to it, and it's holding the water here as the tide is currently out. Here on Sugarloaf Beach, it's almost like a cave's been cut into it there. I think there is a sea cave a little bit further around on one of the other beaches, but this one you can see there. And of course here we're looking at the conglomerate. I don't think I'm going to stand under there because that looks like it could collapse. It doesn't look that safe. So yeah, kind of missed that. And here, like formation of a stack in the conglomerate because you've got a clear dividing line going up through there. Here on the beach at Sugarloaf, looks like at one time there was perhaps a building there on this raised section there. Looks like it's been built up with a bit of cement on the right hand corner. Alas, no more. Maybe it was a beach hut cafe at one time. So this here is actually the Portishead Yacht and Sailing Club. Very useful leisure amenity for the people of Portishead. Well, that was really great. I just bumped into a subscriber here, a gentleman that lives in the town here of Portishead. I think his first name is pronounced Duichi. That may be wrong. I do apologise. Sorry if that's wrong. But yes, he's a Japanese gentleman living here in Portishead. And he also told me that the name Sugarloaf Beach, the reason it's got that name, because originally, not now, it did look like a sugar loaf, not unlike the one over there, the Brecons in Wales. But it doesn't now, of course, because of erosion. Yeah, that was really, really great to meet you. And yeah, we had a little selfie there taken out. He took a photo of me. So that was wonderful, me telling me about that, and I think it belongs to the Sugarloaf swimming club there down by that little slipway, and Portishead Yacht Club. Oh, that's terrific. Really, really good to meet somebody that lives locally here in Portishead. He's been following my channel for some time, so that was great to meet you. Thank you very much for that. I don't know if this is a continuation of Sugarloaf Beach or whether it has a second name or an additional name, if you like, but we're coming around the headland of Black Nore in the moment, which has its own lighthouse, which I'm looking forward to see. Got some more wave cut platforms down there. Now this part of the cliffs here, which have now decreased in height, they're about 9 metres when we started there at the bay. Now we've just got the conglomerate, and the old red sandstones have disappeared on this section. What you do notice about the conglomerate, obviously it's not as hard wearing as the old red sandstone. And you can see these holes in it here formed by the acidic nature of rainfall. Yes, acid rain indeed. What they've done here though is they've actually shored up the conglomerate because it's very, very crumbly and wears away. So they've obviously brought in these rocks from elsewhere here, possibly a type of granite from elsewhere, to shore up the side of the bottom part of this cottage here. Behind me here is Black Nore Lighthouse, which was constructed and opened in 1894. Sadly, in 2010 it was taken out of use. I'm not sure the entirety of reasons for that. Probably cost, I would think. Just spoken to the gentleman that's a subscriber, just pumped into again, and he just told me that the actual lighting unit, that's that big piece that turns with the mirror and the lamp, was actually taken out in August, perhaps to be used in another lighthouse elsewhere in the United Kingdom. But it is kind of maintained. It was repainted a couple of years ago, though it does have one piece of broken glass on it. But it's a wonderful feature here on the England coast path as we make our way to the town of Clevedon. Most impressive buildings which faces the coastline here, but it was difficult for me to get a photograph of it, so I'll include a stock image of it now. It's the National Nautical School, which opened in 1869, which was for the forgotten and destitute boys of the nearby city of Bristol. So they're being trained up to go into potentially the Royal Navy. There was also an associated ship which was anchored off in the bay here, or Bristol Channel should I say, called HMS Formidable. It closed in 1992, so it was impressive, well over 100 years existence, and it's now been converted into very, very nice apartments. As you can see, this section of the walk is Redcliffe Bay, and it's managed by the National Trust. Just gone through a very nice little woodland section as well, but it's delightful here. You wouldn't know you've got a suburban Portishead off to that side with the housing. It's delightful here by the Bristol Channel coast, making our way, continuing along here. Now, the thing is with Redcliffe Bay, it has a bit of a military connection, and that was during the Second World War, an oil terminal opened here, which I believe closed at some point, perhaps in the 1980s, early 1990s, and it reopened, slightly controversially, in 2007. And today it provides aviation fuel for a lot of civil airports around the country, including the one not that too far away here on the edge of Bristol. And it does that using pipelines. So you've got these pipes, and one of the pipelines actually crosses over the Stroudwater Canal near Easington in Gloucestershire, making its way north, I think up to the northwest of England. And that one needs to be cut in, submerged underneath the canal so it can be reopened. But yes, Redcliffe Bay oil terminal here on the edge of the town of Portishead. It's good to report that the footpath here is exceptionally well maintained. You can see it's been cut back recently. They've cut the grass here, but it's been like that throughout on both this section here, the National Trust section, and on the other sections as well. And I think the reason for that, it's an acorn route, so it's a national trail. So like Cotswold Way, Pennine Way, Southwest Coast Path, it attracts a higher level of funding, so the footpath here is to a much higher standard than say some of the other longer distance paths we've done, like the Severn Way and the Geopark Way. Well, we had that blockage there the other day, didn't we, as we're heading into Malvern. But this one here, delighted to report, is very well maintained. A very pungent, sweet smelling shrub here. I don't know what it is. You've got that little island over there in the Bristol Channel. No, it's not Flathorn or Steep. I can never remember the name of it. I think it's not far off Newport. I will put the name of that in round about now. It's gone out of my head what it's called. It's quite an interesting little story behind it, I think, as well. But beautiful views here. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a grey day, so not getting the absolute colours I was hoping for, but made up for by the interest in the area and the geology and the fresh air and countryside that's around us here. I wonder if that's badgers or foxes. I think I'm going for badgers with that one. Recent evidence of digging on the sides there. So this is the underground oil tanker storage facility. It's quite a big site here. As I say, it was completely redeveloped around 2007. Got a couple more bays coming up. The first one is Chalcombe Bay, which I think is the one just in there. And then beyond that is Walton Bay, which sits below the village of Walton in Guldano. Looks like there's a huge outflow pipe there. Don't know if that's still used. It's probably to do with their former base, what is now the Civil Aviation Fuel Dump Depot. And lots of weathering on the coastline here. The conglomerate rocks. The most obvious thing about the rocks here at Chalcombe Bay is that the cliffs are a lot higher. There are some around about 9 metres tall here, which is the highest on our section, I believe, to the town of Clevedon. Beyond that, at Walton Bay, or Walton Cove, is Walton Caravan Park. Quite a huge slab of a wave-cut platform there, down there where the crows are eating something. There are steps down to Chalcombe Bay Beach, but we don't have time for that today, unfortunately. We're going to press on towards the town of Clevedon. I've just been thinking about the England coast path. Just met a couple of serious walkers there. I'm only a gentle wanderer really around the West Country. I'm not sure how many miles the England Coast Path is. Obviously it joins up with the South West Coast Path at Minehead in Somerset and continues round to Poole in BCP, where it joins back up with the England Coast Path. Obviously they run concurrently. The South West Coast Path I think is around about 635 miles, so I'm not sure how many miles the whole of the path is around the whole of England, and I wonder if anybody's, well, I'm sure somebody will have bound to have done all of it. That'll be quite a challenge. It's going to be well over probably 1,500, getting on for 2,000 miles, I would think, if it goes in around all the little coves and nooks and crannies around tidal rivers, etc. But yeah, that would be quite a walk, and obviously most of which is well outside of my area here on West Country Wanderings. And not for the first time, I've just made a big error, because earlier on I said I'd press on to get onto Clevedon, not wanting to go down the steps to the beach. But of course, that is the beach with the sea cave on it. So I think I'm going to retrace my steps and then go down the steps to the beach to have a look at the sea cave. So see you after this break. This is our sea cave here, just off the side of the beach. It doesn't go too far in. Word of warning though, if you do come on these beaches here below the coast path, make sure you've got proper footwear, because I've got boots that support my ankles. Normally on beaches, like if you're on holiday, you might be wearing sandals or plimsolls or something like that. Not recommended on these. Large pebbles are very difficult to walk on. Not only that, they're covered in sea kelp, which is very, very slippery, so you have to be very careful to not damage or twist your ankle on them. But this is great. Somebody's had a fire here, you can just see that there. It's a great sea cave here. You can get under the rocks here. There's a little tidal pool inside the cave. Admittedly not that exciting. You can see all our conglomerate rock inside there. It might be a little bit dark now to see little pools here, tidal pools inside the cave, which is great to see. And that's our conglomerate rock up there with the holes in it, which we've been seeing, because I say, because of the acidic nature of the water and calcification, all that type of thing that's acting on the rock here, which it wouldn't, of course, on the old red sandstone that we saw at the beginning of the video. But that's great to see the sea cave here. So let's retrace. I couldn't go past it. I looked back and I saw the cave and I thought, I can't come here without seeing the sea cave, which I'd heard something about and seen it, so I managed to get a couple of photos of it, so capture a little bit of video for you as well. So we'll continue back on the England Coast Path now to Clevedon. We now come round to Walton Bay, as I say, with its caravan park on the top of it. Interesting little building towards the headland there, like a castle. Perhaps it was a lookout for fishermen, I'm not sure. Possibly got a little radar on top of it as well. Notice here that the geology has changed again. We've got bits of sandstone come back now, so the conglomerates have gone. And we've got, looks like a fault line running through across there as well. Fascinating stuff. I can't go into too much detail about the geology of this. I did make some notes on it, but it is, needless to say, very, very complex, and it often gets visited by lots of prominent geologists across the UK and from further afield as well, because of the complex nature of it and just how much you can actually see. We're now above Walton Bay. The shrubbery comes right up to the edge of the coastline there. That's our sea cave way over in the distance there now. This section is quite hillier, well, not hilly, but undulating compared to the first section to the south of the town of Portishead. Now the next bay is Pigeonhole Bay, and according to my notes that I made before starting the walk, yesterday evening. There is another sea cave there. Not sure we're going to have time to visit that one as well though, but we'll see how we go. Now, I have done a separate video about Clevedon a couple of years ago, which has done really well actually in terms of views, so thank you if you watched that. So if you want to know more about Clevedon itself, then click on the link on that one. At the end of this video I'll link to it. It's a lovely town, so I won't have time to film around there much today. But before we get into Clevedon though, I will just give you a few snippets and facts about the town. It is a lovely place to visit, and full of these large Victorian villas, as the town grew up as a Victorian seaside resort, and people then decided to retire there as well. There's that round castellated building which looks like a radar on it, but it's not going round at the moment. I don't know whether it's still used or not these days. Perhaps an offshoot for the Coast Guard. There's another little cave down there, but that's pretty much inaccessible because you can't get down from the coast path onto that, and it's very slippery and rocky and muddy, so I certainly wouldn't want to try doing that. But you've got lots of rock pools around here with the low tide at the moment, which I think is just starting to change and start to turn and become high again later on. So we've got rock pools there and dotted around the coastline here. Quite a detailed public rights of way sign there from North Somerset Council explaining that the right of way crosses farmland, but it's not open access land. So you have to stick to the path, which is fair enough. But that's not our route. That's obviously heading inland towards Walton and Gordano. The other name of this path, is apart from being, I think, what did I say it was? The Mariner's Path, and also, of course, the England Coast Path, and also being the Gordano, what is it, the Gordano Round. It's also called the North Somerset Tidal Trail. A few facts about Clevedon then. First of all, the name. The cleve bit means cleft, so a cleft valley in the landscape, and that's where it sits. And the dun means hill, so you either have the valley and the hill, and you do have both of those represented in the town. You have the high point there where the church is, the southern part of the town. Beautiful place. Won't have time to explore that today. My YouTube collaborator and friend Darren from Somerset Man Walking has done a video there recently. I will do one there at some point, but there won't be enough time to do that there. I'll see if I can find Darren's and link to that video at the end of this one as well. And so it's on the hill there and the cliff of the valley. And one of the most interesting things about Clevedon is the production of penicillin. Obviously Fleming, wasn't it, Alexander Fleming, who discovered penicillin? I can't remember the year, it's probably around 1930s. So he did like a recipe, for want of a better expression, for the production of penicillin. And during the Second World War, of course, soldiers were out on the front line contracting various different things by fighting out on the battlefield, and they needed a large quantity of penicillin. And that penicillin was manufactured by three people. I think one of them was called Heatley and Chain, I can't remember the other gentleman's name, but there was three of them. They got together, scientists, to start production here in the town of Clevedon of penicillin, which would of course been very, very important for those soldiers, and of course it was then extended out into the wider population during the latter part of the 1940s as the Second World War came to an end. From this location here on the coastal path, we can make out the twin islands in the Bristol Channel, most famously of course of Flatholm and Steepholm. Steepholm is on the left of your screens there, and Flatholm is on the right, almost on the middle of this section of the Bristol Channel. You often see those, of course, from the town of Weston-super-Mare, also here in North Somerset. And just over here, probably won't pick it up on this wide-angle lens I have on today, but that is the city and capital city indeed of Wales, namely Cardiff and Cardiff Bay. Now, if you're interested in my railway series, I have done 3 videos looking at the Portishead Railway, or the Portishead branch, coming out to Bristol Temple Meads, junction there just south of Parsons Street Station, following the Avon Gorge. Done 3 videos on that, and of course that will be reopening in the next couple of years, and work starts on that, I believe, early next year. So they're formulating, get together their workforce and plans to work out how exactly they're going to do it. That's happening right now, and work will start on the ground, I think, early spring next year. So I hope to bring you when that does happen. So perhaps sort of summer, autumn, when there's something to look at, I will come back again to show you that. Now, there was another railway in this area which connected where we're walking to today from Portishead to Clevedon, and then on to the town of Weston-super-Mare, alas no more. Now, several people have asked me, can I do a video about this railway? The problem with it is a very interesting railway. Of course, it joined up with the Portishead branch not far from Portishead railway station. There was two stations. Well, it was resited because of the power station, wasn't it, in the town of Portishead, but it joined up near there. There's very little on the ground to actually see. Now, of course, YouTube being a very visual medium, it's not very interesting you just talking about things without having much to actually show you on the ground as where the line was. Now, obviously, I can walk part of the route along roads and just say, well, the railway went through here and went through here, but there's nothing to see. Nothing to see. I could do that, but I don't think it would make a very interesting or very entertaining or engaging video. There are a couple of videos on YouTube looking at the old photographs and telling you about the history. They're very good, so it's worth checking those out if you want to know more about it. I've got a book about it, but I don't think it's one in particular for my channel, because obviously my channel is more focused around walking rather than desktop studies of doing history. It's not going to work on the ground, I don't think, to give you any form of visual content as to what it looks like today. But it must, interesting line, I think they just kind of borrowed and hobbled together various locomotives from different places to get the line running. It always struggled, and was an early closure, of course, pre-beaching, but interesting. And that would have been a really useful line these days, though, with our ever increasing and congested road network, and it would have been great if that could have been converted to some kind of light railway or tramway to connect those three towns. Of course, today Portishead is much bigger than it was when the railway closed, but of course it will be good when that railway does get connected up back to the city of Bristol from Portishead here. Absolutely enormous piece of driftwood there. It's an entire trunk of a tree, I think. Look how long it is. Wow, that was some tree. Perhaps it was a pine tree, I'm not sure, but intact, and it's on the top of the conglomerate here. This here is known as Margaret's Bay, and you notice there you've got sand deposits, which is from the first time because we had shingle. These are known as Backhill Sands here on the North Somerset coast. Now, the town that we're walking to now, and just on the outskirts, was known for three writers. One, George Gissing, William Makepeace Thackeray, and Samuel Coleridge Taylor. I think that's the right way around, because there was a composer, wasn't he, a black composer called Samuel Taylor Coleridge, whose mother named him after the poet. So I think that's the right way around. But yeah, they came to the town regularly, probably to take to the waters, and they obviously found it beneficial for their creative outputs in this part of a very interesting North Somerset coast. So why wouldn't you? Yeah, so it's I can easily understand why they were drawn to this town, having visited it previously. And I think I'll save the last little fact to Clevedon till last, because if you're interested in photography or the cinema, I think you're going to find this very interesting. Be right back after this break. Well, welcome back. Since you've been watching a couple of adverts, or maybe not if you're on YouTube Premium, I've walked about a couple of 100 metres since then. It gives us our first glimpse of, yes, Clevedon Pier there, which is great to see. Restored and opened in 1989 after collapsing around 1971. This here is Lady Bay. Not sure if we can get down to it. I think that's the right pronunciation. It's spelled L-A-D-Y-E. So I suppose you could pronounce it Ladye, but I think it is Lady Bay here in Clevedon. So as the sign says there, Lady Bay is a clothing optional beach, stroke nudist beach, but a little bit too cold for that today, I think. There's been a landslip here. There was a little piece of wood across the footpath, although it's kind of been moved. You can get past it now, but the landslip is just, you can just make that out, just running along there, so that's a bit sad to see. But here we are, Lady Bay, or Ladje Bay. And there's a sign for that there, North Somerset Council, of course. And it continues on around here. So it's quite an extensive bay. Possibly one of the biggest ones we've seen on our section from Portishead. And there's our pier again over there. Now, in 1873, one of many thousands of people born, I would imagine, well, at least probably hundreds at least, in 1873, was a gentleman called Edmund Raymond Turner here in Clevedon. He later moved to London, I do believe. But he had a short life, which I'll mention in a bit. But he had a rewarding one in the sense of technology, particularly if, like me, you're interested in the world of photography and film and cinema, or the creative process thereof, of all those. Now, it came to light only fairly recently, in the past probably 10 or 15 years, that Edmund Turner was the man that first created colour cinema. Yeah, you heard that right. He did that probably about a year or so before he passed away. Sadly, he passed away in 1903. He was either 29 or 30, and he died of a massive heart attack, possibly genetic related. But before he did that, he created cinema in colour, which is an amazing thing, really. It was a little bit primitive in the sense that what it did was it took 3 images using 3 different colours, 3 filters, if you like, similar to what they've done in 3D films around in the 1950s, the first one, first time they did 3D cinema. So he did that, and then of course, going back through the projector, it did it in reverse. So you had 3 grey coloured plates, which were then overlaid with the colours again, and then they were superimposed on a screen and all shot together. It was primitive. It didn't always work well because the colours got a bit fuzzy and they were a little bit out of sync. But having said that, it was the world's first use of colour cinema, moving images here. He did some work here, and he also did some work in London. Anywhere in the world, which is incredible. And that was, say, between 1901 and 1903 before he passed away. That technology wasn't carried on. You had lots of other ones that came afterwards, but because of what he did, it provided the impetus for others, people in technology, to improve the technology, to go on, to expand it. Obviously, it wasn't until the 1930s that it became more widespread in cinema, as in what people go to view, but there were lots of films filmed. I think probably the most famous colour one was a documentary about the King's visit to India, I think around about 1913. That was in what I would call proper colour. But yes, Mr. Turner here from the town of Clevedon, world's first colour cinema. Very impressive indeed. Well, with Clevedon Pier behind me there, I think this is as good a place as any to end today's video here at Lady Bay. Straight Ladje, I think it is Lady, I think that's right, but I'm sure you correct me in the comments, or if you live locally here to either Clevedon or Portishead. Very delightful walk. It isn't that long, say it's around about 9 kilometres, just over 4 miles or so. I'm going to head into the town now. I'll close the video off with some video clips, and maybe a couple of photographs of the lovely town of Clevedon before I catch my bus and back to catch up my car again in the town of Portishead, or here in the wonderful county of North Somerset, following the England coast path and also the North Somerset tidal path. It's a great walk, and there's lots to see along the way. I love that lighthouse and the sea cave we saw there, as well as seeing some of the fossils. Hope you enjoyed it too. Until next time on West Country Wanderings, I'll link to my Clevedon video and to Darren's video as well, and I hope to see you next time here on the channel. Take care. All the best for now. Bye bye.